If you own a tradie or a contracting business and you want to squeeze more profit out of the jobs you're already doing, this is for you. Now, I'm sharing a training I deliver to our coaching clients that's all about uncovering the hidden profit in your business. Now, you get to listen in.
All right, let's get stuck in. So, setting the scene. You're standing on the deck of an America's Cup yacht. Right? The wind is rushing past. You can feel it in your hair. The ocean is stretching infinitely around you. Now, if you think about one of these boats are some of the fastest boats in the world, and they're engineered to perfection. And these things go about 100 k's an hour with no engine. No engine, and they're going 100 k's an hour. Every single component on one of these yachts, the sails, the foils, the rudders, they've been fine-tuned, right? They've been fine-tuned to catch just the right amount of wind at just the right angle to shave milliseconds off the race time. Now, the kicker with the America's Cup yachts, especially between the winners, right? Emirates, Team New Zealand, yeah, I said it, and the losers, France, are small but precise tweaks, right? Adjusting the sail by a couple of degrees or half a degree. It's shifting weight around, moving the weight forward by a couple of kilos. It's altering the rudder's angle by just a hair. And those minor adjustments that those guys make on those yachts that travel 100 k's an hour plus, they add up to massive gains in speed. Those gains are enough to win a race or to lose one. Now, if you think about your business, you might be running at a decent clip, like that yacht that's skimming on the surface. But my question is, what if you could make a few key tweaks, adjusting how you price your jobs, setting clearer targets for your team, or refining your sales process, whatever it is? Those small changes could be the difference between barely getting by and absolutely crushing your profit goals that you have in your business. And just like the winners, Emirates, Team New Zealand, the America's Cup champions, when you make these adjustments strategically, you don't just go faster, but you leave your competition in the wake. All right. So don't be like the French, the Orient Express, that barely gets a race win ever. Let's dive in and see what those tweaks could look like for your business today. Because it's not just about working harder, it's or building that bigger yacht, right? Smarter adjustments, small tweaks all the time that skyrocket your speed and your profit. I'd love to know in the chat, what's your biggest frustration with making profit? There's none. Not making enough. Repeat work, rework. Yeah. Variations. Jobs taking longer than quoted. Cash flow. Seems like I'm making some and then lose on the other end. So maybe, yeah, you're looking at a job or something like that, and then when you look at your net profit at the end of the month, it's not there. How to price jobs properly. I want to be more profitable, but I feel guilty about wanting it. Hey, that's massive, man. I'm glad you wrote that down. Justifying boosting up a quote or pricing. Yep. So pretty similar, I would say, to John there, Nigel. Callbacks, not making enough, and not being able to figure out why. Poorly run job by inefficient builders. Just not getting there, make profit, more costs, take time, consistency, workflow, low conversion rates, difference on GP compared with net profit, jobs taking longer, employees are too slow, pricing jobs as they should be, just being beaten by a competitor that's racing to the bottom. Yep, that's frustrating. How to put set amount of time away, or set amount of money away so you have enough to pay bills. Okay, so lots of different sort of frustrations, lots in the pricing, and in the team there as well, and in some of the mindset too. Okay, good, nice. And that's fair, right? Like, it is frustrating when you work your ass to the bone and you don't see anything on the other side. So this session's going to be about what the tweaks can be so that you can slowly start to chip away at that all the time so you can make profit consistently. So few problems. If you don't have those tweaks, you're not armed with them, you don't know what to do. The first one is a bit of chaos in your margins, right? So you might have some jobs that are profitable and some that are honestly just down the toilet, and it's a little bit of a roller coaster. It might feel like walking across that Lego floor. Anybody feel that, where some jobs do really well and some jobs just suck? Yeah, right. And the next problem is there's missed opportunities. Like if you're not all over this, there is lots of high margin work out there or high GP per hour that isn't identified, and you can end up underpricing, not pricing enough hours, not pricing enough in your margins in terms of actual markups on your materials and stuff. And you end up underpricing and leaving money on the table. And honestly, decisions can feel like guesswork if you're not all over this. Poor cost awareness, poor knowing what's going into the jobs. And so you honestly have no idea what's going to come out of it. And I'm sure you guys have felt this. When your profit is low, your morale and your motivation can take a hit, right? It does fuck with you, right? I know it does. And it makes sense that it does. Shitty profit degrades the way that you show up every day. So it's really important that we're on top of this so that we can show up really strong for everybody who needs us to be strong, right? Team, family, all the rest. So if you nail this and you do a really good job, you're on top of the tweaks, adjusting the sales, adjusting the rudder, everything else, there's a bunch of opportunities on the other side. Firstly, profit is predictable. Kind of like Max Verstappen getting in his Red Bull race car, wins every race, right? You'll get predictable and reliable margins on every job. And when you do that, that brings confidence and clarity to your pricing and your delivery. And you maximize your profits. So you identify and you price high margin work. And when you do that, that improves your revenue and it flows down into your GP, and then that flows down into your net profit. And when you have strong profit, generally that turns into strong cash flow. Obviously, you have to collect it, but that should turn into cash in your bank account, and you can take more home and invest more into your business. And ultimately, that leaves you motivated, right? The opposite of before. When you have high profit, you have more cash in your bank, you have the confidence to push on, and it flows into everything. It flows into where you put your money, into new hires that you invest that you need to be able to grow and smash through those glass ceilings, right? More confidence to put into buying better equipment so that your team can go and crush the jobs even more. And when you show up motivated, I'm sure you've seen this before. When you're on and you show up for your team, they get behind you, right? You guys seen that before? When you're on, the team are on, right? They love it. They get behind you. It's like you're the Braveheart, effectively, right? Charging forward, and they're all behind you, running at full pace, ready to go to war, right? That's what we want to have. So high profit brings high motivation, helps you invest, helps the team get behind you. Hallelujah, Michael, 100%. So 5 key principles to nail this team. First one is you absolutely must keep score, right? The scoreboard tells the story of what happened in the game. So if you think about a basketball game, if you like basketball, the coach, they're looking at a bunch of stats. That's what they're doing a lot of the time during the game, post game, pre game, all of that, right? Obviously, they look at the overall scoreboard, like the one up on screen, as that's the end result right now, whatever moment they're looking at it in, right? Are their team in the lead or are they behind, and by how much? But they're not just looking at that. So they're not just looking at their net profit if they were you. They're digging further and they're looking at what tweaks that they need to make. Right, so they look at things like their free throw rate. They're looking at things like the number of assists and who's getting them. They're looking at their offensive rebound percentage. They're looking at their 2-point percentage, their 3-point percentage. They're looking at the blocks. They're looking at the steals, how often they're happening, and they're looking at a whole bunch more as well. They look at all of this during the game. So when they take their timeouts, they can have the chat, realign the team, make sure everyone knows what their role is, and they can go back out and take the victory. That's what they're doing all the time. So in your business, you need to be looking at your scorecard and digging into your deeper details, right? Use back costing to assess each job's profitability against client type, against job type, against the tradesman or the crew that's out on that site. And you want to look at past margins as well. Like look at your gross profit in dollars, the amount of money that you're actually collecting. Look at your gross profit in dollars per hour spent on site. You need to check your labor utilization. Like how billable are your team on site getting paid for by your clients for the total amount of time that you pay them? Can you increase that? Right? If you don't measure it, you can't improve it. Okay? So you got to do this. You got to check this stuff all the time and get deeper than just those high level numbers on your profit and loss. Right? If you don't measure it, you can't improve it. All right. Number two is you need to understand the difference between cash and profit. So I'm going to throw this question to you. Why do cash and profit differ? Yeah, cash is in the bank, definitely. Debt, yes. So debt that you have to pay, like your finance for your vehicles, or it might be a director's loan or any other loans that you have, that doesn't show up on the profit and loss. Cash isn't yours. It's there to pay everything. Profit is what's left over after everything's paid. So you've got your profit, your net profit, and then you've got everything else that sits underneath it. So your taxes, your loans that you have to pay, those sit in your balance sheet. And then you've got, after everything, then you've got your cash, right? So there's things that don't show up on your profit and loss that are really important to be aware of. So your debtors and your creditors, they're not on your P&L. Your P&L is an accrual-based system, and we're going to have a look at that soon. But it's really important to understand that what's on your profit and loss comes in there when things get invoiced. So when your suppliers invoice you, it shows up on your P&L, but you don't have to pay it till next month, right? When you invoice your clients, that shows up on your profit and loss, but they pay you when your terms say they pay you. So that could be today, that could be in a week, that could be on the 20th of next month, and that depends on your payment terms that you have, all right? Your loans for vehicles, your loans to cover you if you've had to get one to stay in business in the past or whatever. Like if you've bought a property in your business and you need to pay a mortgage on that property, that doesn't show up in your profit and loss. So you need to be looking at your profit and maximizing that, but also understanding how cash flows into your business and out of your business. That's really important. So there's lots of things to look at with this. The other thing to be aware of is your drawings, right? If you're taking drawings out of your business, they don't show up into your profit and loss until your accountant puts them there. And they'll put some of them there if it's for a salary, and they might just put some of it into your balance sheet. All right. I like this. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is king. How good. Good share, man. So understand the difference between cash and profit. Really important. All right. Number three is you got to take aim. So for you to hit really good margins, you must have strong targets. That means you need to have targets for revenue. That means you need to have targets for your margins, and you need to have gross profit per hour targets for different types of jobs. So when you price for a bunch of different types of work, and you will be doing a bunch of different types of work, so different types of clients, different types of jobs, what you'll notice is that you'll be able to earn more as a margin on some jobs, or more gross profit per hour on some jobs than others. People will accept a higher rate, a higher margin. And so you have to actually have these targets for you to then go and price and set your team up for success so that they know how to win, for you to actually earn that result. And so targets can be across margin percentages on your jobs, gross profit per hour targets on your jobs. They can be net profit targets, can be revenue targets. There's a bunch of different things that you can have for targets. But the thing is, at the start, you just must have targets. And one easy place to start is some margin targets on your work. And we'll look at those a little bit later. But if you haven't got any targets, it's a good place to start. But really important that you start to get across different types of targets that you can have in your business: revenue, your margins, so your job profitability, your net profitability. And then you can start targeting other things like individual targets for your teams and everything else. All right. But the principle is you must have a target so you can actually hit the target. All right. Pushes you to achieve it. And when you increase your target, you figure out how to achieve it. All right. When you push it, you figure out how to achieve it. That's number three, take aim. Number four is you got to look at your levers that you can pull, especially with your job profitability. So you have to use all of your levers to get profit overall. That's really important. It's not just about pulling one over and over again, because eventually that lever just won't pull. You've got to pull all three. So the first lever is your pricing lever. And there's lots of things that you can do with your pricing to achieve better margins. So as we said before, you got to have good pricing targets for different types of jobs that you do. If you're a plumber, for example, a hot water cylinder replacement, that's going to have quite a different gross profit margin target to piping out a new house. It will. So you need to have a different target for them. Knowing what these should be and pricing well for them is really important. So there's some benchmarks you can use to start, but as you get deeper, right, as you get into that coach role that we talked about before with the basketball, you need to know what these targets are for different types of jobs. Really important. That way you can increase your profit. Around pricing as well, you need to make sure that you're allowing in pricing for travel. Anyone here pretty rural and send the guys pretty long way to go and do jobs? You got to account for that, right? If you don't account for that properly, you lose there. So you got to make sure that you look at your travel around your pricing and you constantly look at tweaking that. So you might go as far as having zones, or you might do a kilometer rate or a mile rate, whatever's better for you. But to make it easier, zones can be really good. You need to have specialist rates. So if you're a specialist for your type of work, or you do a bunch of work in your trade and you have, so if you're a plumber and you have a gas fitter and you do some gas work, that might be a specialist rate that you can charge out for. So you need to consider, if you do have some specialist work that you do, is that worth more? Yes. Can you charge for it? Yes. Are you charging for it? I don't know. But you need to be. All right. Charging for apprentices. Yeah. Charging for consumables. We need to be looking at all of these. These are our pricing levers that we can start to look at. And we'll get into depth with these soon. Once the pricing's done right, that's your first lever. The second is to make sure that the productivity on site is solid. So every job needs to be back costed and reviewed so you can start to get some trends. You need to look at starting to replace over repairing. All right. That gives you the ability to sell materials and clip more for the time that's spent on the job. All right. Processes to make sure that jobs get set up really well and get done really well, and the guys can lean on the process rather than you. All right. And then if that second lever is pulled well, then you'll need to start looking at your utilization of your staff. All right. So if that second lever is pulled well, what you'll see as an indicator is that if you price a job at a margin, so say 45%, when you back cost that job, it hits 45%. And that's how you know that you've done a good job with that second lever. The guys are on target for the jobs. And then that third lever is the efficiency of your staff. So how billable are they? That third lever is how utilized are your team? So the amount of hours that they're spending on site doing jobs, getting paid for by the clients. So can you schedule the guys more efficiently, or keep the guys in similar areas so they're not driving around from job to job all day, but they're on site billable no matter what? All right. So you've got your pricing, you've got your productivity, and you've got your labor utilization. Those are your three levers that you need to pull. And then the last principle of this is can I? So you've got to do this all the time. Can I stands for constant and never-ending improvement. So I talked about Red Bull before. This is an easy one to go to. They are the experts at this stuff. They hold the race record for fastest pit stop in Formula One. All right. And they set this back in 2023 in October. And their pit stop time, the fastest they've done, is 1.82 seconds. So if you haven't watched Formula One, or you have, what you need to know is that in this 1.82 seconds, they essentially need to have the car hit the marks. The car needs to be raised on the jacks. 4 wheel nuts get removed. The tires get changed, or the wheels get changed. They put them back on. They put the wheel nuts back on. They drop the car back to the floor, and the driver pulls away from the box. They do all that in under 2 seconds. Now, that just didn't happen overnight. This is iterations over time. It's processes. It's having the right amount of people. It's making sure that people knew exactly what to do. This is iteration, right? Obviously, there's competition there, but it's iteration. Doing that's crazy, right? If you think about it, it is fucking wild. But it's about having the process. Your people know exactly what to do, and then they can just start practicing and getting better and better and better all the time. And this is something that your guys can do. They can get better. They shaved 0.2 seconds off. Damn. So your profit strategy and your processes, they need the same sort of commitment. That's the thing you got to realize from this. They needs the same commitment. Constantly looking for ways to improve, whether that's like streamlining your workflow, whether it's finding better clients who will pay better margins, using better equipment on site, tweaking your pricing. It's about small and constant improvements that will lead you to the massive gains over time. That's what we're looking at here, okay? I just want to quickly jump into the profit and loss. This is your high-level scorecard, all right? And I want to make sure that you understand it. This is not the deep dive. This is the scoreboard that we looked at. It's the one that you can see in the basketball game as a spectator, right? Who's on top, who's behind. And it's important that you know how this runs so that you can start to understand how all of this fits together. So just a real quick run through of the profit and loss. Your top line up here is your sales, or it might be called your revenue or your income. That is the amount of money that you've invoiced in the period of time that you're looking at your profit and loss. So normally you'd look at your profit and loss on a month-to-month basis, and that is the dollar figure for the amount that you've invoiced out. Now, to invoice out the revenue, you need to incur some costs to produce the revenue. So this is called the cost of goods sold, or the direct costs, and this is made up of these items here. So that is your wages of your guys that are out on site doing the work. It is your material costs that you use, or that you purchase to be able to deliver the projects or the jobs for your clients. It's the subbies that you use on site, and it's the equipment hire that you have. Now, some of the other lines that you might have seen on any of our examples is your stock and your work in progress. These are adjustments to make sure that essentially the amount of work that you've gone and build out, the work that you've built out incurs the right materials and the right and the right amount of job, like production, for the amount that you've invoiced out. So if you've got jobs that have started and you've incurred a bunch of costs, but you haven't invoiced out for that job so far, work in progress is essentially an adjustment for that. I'm not going to deep dive that too much today. If you have any questions about it, talk to your coach or go and jump into the membership site. There's a bunch of trainings on this, but those are your direct costs. Now, when we look at your gross profit, which is the line underneath that, that is your sales. If I go over here, that's your sales minus your costs of goods sold. That equals your gross profit, right? And your gross profit is your job profitability. Best way to think about it, it is your job profitability. And the first calculation that we need to know is your gross profit margin. So your gross profit margin is the percentage of your revenue that is job profitability. So the way to work that out is we go our gross profit and we divide that by our revenue, and then we times that by 100. So in this example here on this profit and loss, we've got 110,816. So that number would go over here. And then we'd divide that by our revenue, or our sales. So that number there. So that's going to be 110,816 divided by 268,460. And then we times that by 100 to turn it into a percentage. And that gives us our gross profit margin, which Aiden Clues has kind of calculated for me, is 41%. Now, like I said before, this is your job profitability. So when you go and back cost all of your jobs, you work it out in the same way. You have your margins for your jobs that are completed. What should happen if everything goes to plan, when we've looked at our pricing, our productivity, and our people, when you price all of your jobs for those margins, it should spit out a pretty similar margin on your profit and loss. Now, that doesn't always happen, and we'll talk about that as we go through each one of the things that we're going to work on today. But that's what should happen. If you're pricing well, your people are going and hitting jobs on target, and they're scheduled well, and they're utilized fully. That's what will happen. So that is our job profitability. Now, if we go back to the profit and loss, all of this on the like under the gross profit is our operating expenses, or our fixed costs. Now, that's everything else, all of the indirect costs that you have that you need to pay for to run your business. So that's your rent or your lease. That's things like your accounting, your insurance, like the amount of money that you pay us will go into here as well. It's your salaried employees, and most likely you. So most of you guys will be off the tools. Some of you won't. But if you are off the tools, you will show up down here in the salaries, and then you'll have some office wages as well. Now, we also want to look at this ratio as well. This isn't so important for this training today, but essentially what you want to do to figure out what your overhead percentage or your fixed cost percentages is you take your fixed costs. So your fixed cost here, which would be 55,000 in this example, and you divide that by your revenue, same as before, and you times that by 100. So that'll be 55,182 divided by 268,460, and that would give you a percentage, which in this case is about 20%. All right. And your fixed cost should live anywhere in between 18 and 28%. If it's under that, you're under resourced and you're probably not doing everything in the office properly, or it's not being done at all. All right. And then your last number that you want to look at is your net profit. So your pre-tax net profit is everything after all your costs are incurred. It's your sales minus all of your costs, and that equals your net profit. Remember, this is not your cash, this is your net profit. So in this case, we've got 55,634. And to figure that out as a percentage, we'd go net profit divided by revenue times 100, same as before. And if we did that here, that would also give us a 20% net profit. All right. So your goal here is 15 to 20% net profit. Now, you guys might say, hey, Cam, what if I want to earn 25 or 30 or 35% net profit? I'd say, yeah, you can, but you're probably going to kill yourself or somebody else in your team. And eventually they'll run out of gas and that number will go to the floor. So the reason why we target 15 to 20% is that generally means you've got enough infrastructure in your OPEX to be able to run your business, do all of the pricing, take all the inquiries, get leads in, manage the jobs, like project manage the jobs, invoice, collect the money in. That's all happening like clockwork, right? That's the target. So they all work together. All right. And that is effectively our P&L. Okay. So that's the profit and loss. There's more trainings on this, but I just want to make sure that you understand how the margins are working because we're talking about profitability today. The next thing I want to talk about just really quickly is I just want to go back to those levers really quick. And I think this is just good to write down just to put into your brain, which is the 3 Ps of making profit. So I did talk about these, but I want to make sure you've got them locked inside. All right. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that your pricing is on point. So nothing happens in terms of achieving margin before your pricing is right. If you price a job at 15% gross profit margin, you're going to be fucked. Like you've got to get your pricing right before anything else can follow. Okay. So make sure that your pricing's right because you need to have your pricing solid margins before you have any chance of making money. All right. It doesn't work to go in and underprice and then just try and make sure your guys bash out the job. Seen it a million times. It does not work. So you got to get your pricing right. That is your first lever. So this is looking at how you can increase your pricing, how you can increase your margins. So then you can go and get good job profitability. Now, following that third one is, that second one, sorry, is to look at your productivity. So how can we improve our efficiency out on site? So remember that measure for success with your productivity is in your back costing. You price a job for 45%. Are the team going and landing that job at 45%? Yes or no? Is the efficiency on point? Do the guys know what they're doing? Are they trained well? Do they have good processes? All right. So your productivity, how can we improve those efficiencies? And then the last one is your people. So those are your 3 Ps. So that's your utilization. That's making sure your assets, your most important assets, which is your guys that are out on the tools, how they can be billable, scheduled on client sites all the time to make sure they're generating job profit, gross profit. Does that make sense, team? We've got those 3 Ps locked in our brain. So when we go and look at our P&L, right, this number right here, that number, that GP percentage, we turn that into a percentage. When you go and look at that number, if you're satisfied or unsatisfied with that number, it's going to come down to 1, 2, or all 3 of those. That is what it stems from. So is your pricing right? Yes or no for that type of job? Now, are the guys able to go and deliver on the amount of hours that you've put to that job or the stage in the job or whatever? And then are your people scheduled all the time? So those are the 3 areas that I would look at all the time to make sure that you are on top of your margins, your gross profit margin particularly. All right, so we're going to jump into the profit maximizer now, and in your workbook on the next page here, we're going to look at pricing, and we're going to start looking at all of the things, the tweaks that you can make, the constant and never-ending improvement. But one thing that I think is quite important to look at is the effect on price. Anybody seen this sheet before? The effect that pricing has on your ability to earn? It's wild. And actually, not as many hands went up as I expected. I want to show you how this works. So we're just going to look on the left-hand side of this in the increasing your prices section. So we're just looking over here. If you increase your prices, and we're going to use one of these numbers up the top. So in the yellow boxes, that's your current margin. All right. So your current gross profit margin on your profit and loss. So if we use 35% as our starting point, what this tells you is that if you were to increase your prices by 10%, which is the blue box on the left-hand side, what that tells you is that this number here, this 22%, is essentially the percentage of work that you could do less, the 22% less work you could do, and you'd earn the exact same amount of gross profit. So the same amount of money. Increase your price by 10%, you can do 22% less work. So what that means is if you increase your prices by 10% and your margin was 35% and you lost 10% of your work, you'd be making a buttload more money, right? And this impact is bigger the lower your margins currently are. So if we looked at one other example and we took 25% and you increase your prices by 10%, now you could drop your sales by almost 30% before you lost any money. A third almost of your work could just disappear and you would make the same money. Price has so much impact on how much gross profit you can make. So that's why that's the first lever. Plus you not being able to like make that back, right? If you underprice your jobs. Now, here's the scarier part. If you discount your prices, so we're looking at decreasing your pricing. And if we looked at 35% here as well, if you decrease your price for a customer or all your customers by 10%, you actually have to increase the amount of work that you do by 40% to make that up. Now, here's a question. Who's finding it a little bit difficult to get a bunch of work in the door right now? Few of us, eh? Please don't discount. Please don't drop your prices. No more discounts. Yes. Thank you, Fareed. Right? It has a massive impact on how much money you can make. No more free shit. Don't even give your consumables away. Charge for everything. Right? So it's massively important that you got your pricing on deck. So pricing matters. Hopefully that got the point across. When we look at the profit maximizer here, there's a bunch of strategies that you can go and look at. So if we look at this list, the first one is have and review your target margin for each type of work. Now, there's some benchmarks here. Another one we talk about quite often is commercial being at 30+%. All right. Those are the benchmarks that we talk about. Now, I would also take that a step further and make sure that you're back costing your jobs all the time for gross profit per hour. And you look at that, that's your apples for apples comparison, right? You want to be in the top 25% of the market. That's what you want to look at. So bunch of things you can do here. Price for gross profit. That's so obviously we can know what our margins are going to be when they come back and we can back cost against them. We want to make sure that we charge for variations. You want to make sure you charge for a service fee for attending a job, right? Like charge a service fee for showing up. And you sell that as this is us coming and diagnosing, and we'll look at the job and you get 30 minutes of labor, right? And then you can sell your materials on top. But that way you're not going out, you're not sending your guys and making them unbillable, driving around the city for free, all right? Can you increase your hourly rate? I'd love everyone to chuck in the chat. When was the last time you increased your hourly rate for your tradesmen? Let me know. 6 months, December. Oh, Dale, nice. Alex Luca yesterday, coming into the year hot, my man. March 24, last July, 1 month, 3 months. Hey, good. There's a few people that have done it pretty recently. This time last year, reviewing now, Tim, 12 months ago for a few people. 1st of Jan, Matt. Hopefully that was this year. Hey, 1 year, Ryan. 2 weeks. Nice. So lots of us are looking at this. It's good. Chuck in the chat if you have specialist rates and what for. If you have someone in your team or a few people in your team that do specialist work, what are you charging them out for? There'll be a bunch of different things here from a bunch of different trades. Inspectors, perfect. HVAC and security, nice. CCTV, good. Chuck in how much extra you charge as an hourly rate. $15 extra, $15 for gas, license $10 more. Sweet. Thermal screening, Thomas. Extra for irrigation, $20 extra an hour. All right, cool. What I want you to do is I want you to look at this sheet, this page, and I want you to pick the top one item that you think would be quick to implement that you can use to increase your pricing. Pull that lever. There's a bunch of things on here. I'm just going to give you 1 minute. 2 minutes, sorry. What you should have is some thought around one strategy that you can implement to tweak your pricing, pull that pricing lever and increase your margins, right? That's the first step that we look at. And I think it's really important that you've started to think about how as well. So hopefully there was some good chat in the rooms around how you'll do that and you'll put that thought into practice. What that means is you can probably go and implement that pretty fast. A lot of the pricing strategies are things that you can do in a week. You can do them and you can start to see the result from these pretty much straight away. Now, some of you guys will do bigger projects and it might take a little bit longer for you to see the results. But for anyone who does projects that are pretty quick within the month or jobs that get done today or tomorrow or the next day, then you can totally make that happen. You can start to see the results pretty much straight away. The second one, remember, this is the productivity. So when you price well, this is your test to see if the guys are going to go and implement the projects well, and you'll see that margin percentage come back in your back costing. So when we look at the profit maximizer and we focus on productivity, the first one up the top is you must check this. You must see if the guys are doing a good job on site or not. So are they running over or under on their hours, or are they on target? And what are the trends that you see? So the first thing that you've got to do with this is you've actually got to back cost your jobs. So I'm just going to put this one out there for you. If you're not doing this already, please don't go and do anything else. Just start with actually back costing your jobs. Okay? Because I know there'll be a few of you that have done it a bunch in the past and you've dropped off. Maybe you just need to start that again. And I would say that if that's you, you should just go and do that. But there's a bunch of stuff that you can do to make sure that your team are more efficient when they go and do every project. So you can look at things like making sure that you have good QA checklists. So this is quality assurance to make sure that you have a check in place to see that everything's been done to the scope of the job, the promise that you made through your sales process, or the estimate that you did. There's pre-job checklists. So how can you set your team up better for success so that they have all the right materials, they know exactly what to do, they know who's doing what, right? Can you set them up success better at the start of the job? There's a bunch of other things that you can do in here as well. So some of this is managing your costs, things like negotiating better costs with your suppliers. And just pop in the chat with me, for me, sorry. When was the last time you went and talked to your suppliers about better pricing for your materials? Hayden, you do this monthly. Can you unmute? How often do you get a better deal from your suppliers, dude?
Probably every 2 or 3 months.
That's killer, eh? How much revenue do you do a month, Hayden?
We're up around the 90 to 100.
90 to 100. So what I've heard, thank you, dude. Appreciate that. What I've heard a bunch of times is I don't have enough buying power. Only the big, only the huge companies that have sites all across Australia or all across New Zealand or multi-country, whatever, they're the only ones who can get better rates from their suppliers because they buy so much. Fuck that. Go and talk to them. They're keen to have you as a customer, just like you're keen to have your good customers be your good customers continuously, right? There's a lot of you guys that have never done this. It's good that a lot of you have done this, but I would absolutely encourage you to go and try. And it's an easy thing that you can do, right? Yes, Nigel, if you don't ask, you won't get. Absolutely not. So props to you, Hayden, and props to everyone else that's done this a bunch. But that's something you can easily do to get better margins, right? A couple of % off makes a big difference. It comes back in your margin on your jobs, and it comes back in your net profit and in your cash in your bank account at the end of the day. One that stands out to me quite a lot is this one. Institute a replace rather than repair policy. Now, does anybody consider themselves a nice guy here? Show of hands. Does anyone feel like they're a bit of a nice guy? A lot of you nice guys like to go and deliver the best solution for your customer, which you think is delivering the cheapest price, right? I'll come in, I'll repair it, I'll get the guys to come in and do it. We'll repair it, it'll be all good. Is that actually the best thing for the customer in the long run all the time? No, right? Because you're repairing old equipment for the most part. And you screw yourself at the same time. Like most of the repair jobs have small amounts of materials and they don't actually get you high GP per hour. So it's actually not that great for the customer and it's definitely not great for you. So looking at that as a potential profit maximizing strategy can be really powerful to improving your margins and improving your job, your GP per hour. That's going to improve the amount of money that you take home from the hours that your guys go and spend on site, which is the important thing to look at, right? So that's a potential option. Cheaper to replace with labor rates these days anyway. Absolutely. That can be another factor as well. So bunch of strategies in here that you can pick from. I'd love for you to pick your number one. What one stands out to you the most? Some of these are a little bit longer to implement. Going and creating a bunch of QA checklists isn't an overnight thing. But all of these are tweaks that you can make. So circle the one or tick the one that stands out to you the most as the productivity profit maximizing strategy that you want to implement. The last lever that we're going to look at is your people utilization. So this does start with measuring it as well. And you need to essentially just go and measure in its simplest form. This is what you're doing with labor utilization. You're going and you're measuring how many hours you pay your on-site team for. So if they all do 40 hours, that's 40 hours per tradesman that you pay them for. And you measure that against the amount of time that they're billed against jobs, right? So the time that they're being billed to a client. And what you're measuring at the end of that is the percentage of the amount of time that you pay them for that's billed to a client. That is your labor utilization calculator. And if you've never done this before, the thing that you'll realize is that if you've only got them billed out for, say, 70% of time, it's the opportunity cost. That's the thing that really screws you when it comes to the amount of money that you're missing out on. It's not just the cost of the amount that you pay them. So if there's 30% of their wage that you pay, it doesn't seem like a crazy amount. It's still a bit like, ugh, but it doesn't seem like a crazy amount. But 30% is a massive amount of opportunity cost. That's time where they are out billable, making you money for the charge out rate, but also making you money based on the materials that you're selling for them going and doing the work. Right. So it's not just $100 an hour as their charge out rate. It's $100 an hour plus the material sell, right? The margin that you make on the product. So when you go and measure this, there's a bunch of ways that you can improve it. So the first thing that I would encourage everyone to do is that top one, fuck that right off as soon as you can. No more labor only work. Like, please eliminate this. Now, the trap with labor only work is that it looks good when you look at it as a margin, right? Because when you do your labor only work, you're probably back costing it and it looks like 60 or 65%. But when you go and you look at your labor only work, that's 65% as a margin, and you compare that to a bigger project where you've sent the guys out and it's like a 40% margin job where you've sold a bunch of materials, that will generate you way more gross profit dollars per hour spent going and doing the job. And that is your return on investment for your team's time. So that's why you must go and look at your gross profit per hour, but you got to measure your labor utilization and really get rid of the labor only work as much as you can. So that is a great start. There's a bunch of other things that are quite simple. Like actually look at how often your guys are taking breaks. Like if you have any vapors or smokers in the room, like are they going and taking 25 breaks a day plus their lunch break and not actually doing the jobs on site? Like, do you look at this stuff? Look at your client trips. Like if you're somebody who does big projects, has anybody done big projects before and had their clients get them to come back to site and then back to site and then back to site and then back to site, and it just feels like it goes on forever? Yeah, a few of us, right? Like you can put in a certain amount of trips to site into your quote, into your terms. And then if they keep fucking you around, like somebody said at the start with the builders not managing their project well, it's now their problem and not your problem because you've been clear about that from the start. Bunch of other things in here, like looking at using GPS units. I recently talked to somebody who installed GPS units into their vehicles. And just from that, not anything else, just from that, they improved their GP margin by 9% because their team knew that they could be watched. He didn't even look, but they became way more efficient. That's a wild gross profit margin increase right there, yeah? So there's a lot of things that you can do to make sure that your people are way better utilized. And this is just isn't labor utilization. It's making them way more as an asset to produce more margin through selling more materials and everything else. What is the people utilization strategy that you want to implement? Go through that checklist, take a minute, and select the one that stands out to you the most. Here's where it comes to the crunch. You've picked 3, 1 from each lever. I just want you to write down the top 2 for you. You don't need to chuck it in the chat, but your next steps here are to go and pick your top 2 strategies. Now, what I would say is pick the ones that are going to move the needle the furthest in the quickest amount of time. That is a great start point to start building some momentum back into your profitability. So the top 2, I want you to pick and implement over the next month. And then my challenge to you is to commit to implementing one of these per month. Like print this workbook off if you haven't and chuck it somewhere where you can look at it frequently. Trim the sails. All right, this is about constant and never-ending improvement. Small tweaks are the thing that leads you to the big gains. All right, so top 2, what are those going to be? And then 1 per month. So we're going to wrap up there, guys. That's us today, team. Thanks for hanging out. Lots of fun. I'll see you all very soon. Get stuck into 2025, eh? See you later.
Are you looking to improve your business? Now, the fact that you're still watching tells me you are, in which case, this next part is for you. Now, right now, I'm giving away 4 free business planning sessions. Now, in these sessions, we'll give you a map to improve your cash flow, build systems, and win more profitable work. Now, I only have 2 requirements. Firstly, you must be the owner of an electrical, a plumbing, or a similar tradie or contracting business. Secondly, you'll be making a minimum of $40,000 in revenue per month. Now, if that's you and you're interested, then all you need to do is click the first link in the description. Talk soon.